Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, or if you're new, welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is a little bit different than most of, if not all of my other videos. I specialize in US politics, and as an American and Canadian, I thought it would be a very good idea to also take a look at the coming Canadian election on or before October 20th, 2025. And so this video is very different from my previous videos because I definitely take on a different stance on this in this video. It is something new for me, and it's going to be great because we have a lot to take down when it comes to this upcoming Canadian election. And as someone who was born in America and who is American, but also Canadian, both my parents were born and raised in Quebec, in Montreal. So I do have a lot of roots going back to Canada as well and the United States. This is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, but have waited until the right time to do it. And now with the Canadian election coming close, and a lot of controversy, a lot of social media, and a lot of people talking about this election, it's going to be a good time for me to step in and kind of give you guys the data and the numbers on what's actually going on in this election. So if you're new to my channel, all my Canadian viewers, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Please put any comments, suggestions, anything in the section below, anything that would help me because I am new to Canadian elections. You can also check out my track record when it came to the 2024 United States election, where I correctly predicted 49 out of 50 states in the presidency. I correctly predicted the Senate and the House Representative pretty accurately. So you guys can check that out also while you're looking at my channel. But first, let's just take a look at this 343 seats in the House of Commons. This always increases depending on the population of Canada itself. And since Canada is growing pretty quickly compared to its population in terms of a percentage, this number of seats is going to keep going out. In the previous election, I do believe it was 338 seats. And excuse me if I say electoral votes because I am so used to saying that with the United States. And you see on my thumbnail, it does show Pierre's face and Trudeau's face. Trudeau is actually outgoing. He has resigned as the Prime Minister of Canada, but he is still on the face here because we don't really know who's going to be the next one in charge, but we do know that it is not going to be Trudeau. The election, in order to find that candidate, is probably going to be somewhere this summer, maybe a little bit earlier. It says here on March 9th, so I guess in a few months we'll know for sure. That is going to be a completely other video where I do explain who I think it is going to be, but just to sum it up, I do think it'll be Mark Carney. I do think he is the person that would probably be the one who takes the torch from Trudeau and faces up against Poilievre this October, as well as some other candidates like Blanchard, and we have Singh, May, and Maxime Bernier. And this is an election that's going to be very consequential given that how the US and Canada, the relationship right now is a little weird going into with the tariffs that are going back and forth and all that stuff. So this is going to be really, really interesting to see what happens to the Canadian election and see how they react, or the new leader reacts to a relationship with the United States. But let's just take a look right now at polling and seeing where that's out. Now, usually when I go over American polling, it is a lot more inaccurate and all over the place. Canadian polling for me seems a little bit more accurate, with some exceptions, of course, which I will get into later. But right now, Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre is at a strong 44.4%. He has dropped a little bit in recent times, while the Liberals have gone up a little bit. And that's because of two main issues. The first one is that Trudeau is stepping down, and a lot of Liberals, not a lot, but some of them that had switched from Liberal to NDP probably will go back to the Liberals, as well as some from the Conservative side. So that's going to be something that you will see, as well as the tariffs that Trump did impose. It may benefit the Liberals just a little bit, depending on who really comes out on top in terms of the rhetoric that they use. But for right now, Poilievre is strong. He's at 44.4%. The Liberals, whoever will be in charge in the next few months, probably Carney, 22.5%, Singh and a New Democratic Party. The NDP is at 17.5%. The Bloc Québécois are at 8.1%. And then Greens and others are much, much down So we have seat projections over here on CBC, and this is very interesting because we do most likely have a conservative majority government. I'd say almost probably over a 95% chance as of now that we do have a conservative majority government. So on average, the Conservatives are supposed to win 217 seats. The Liberals will be at 62, and that's a huge decrease from the 153 seats that they currently have. That would be catastrophic of them to lose almost all of that and be down to 62. And we could see scenarios where they do go down all the way to even 43, or on an even extreme scenario, them going all the way down to 23. But another big loser of this election will be the NDP, projected at only 21 seats, and that's down from 25. So proportionally, they will also be losing a lot of seats. And as you can see here, if we go to the graph, the NDP has been falling recently. As I had explained before, the NDP has been losing a lot of Liberals that had switched from the Liberal Party to the NDP. But now some of those NDP members will be switching back to the Liberal Party, knowing that Justin Trudeau will not be the head of the party itself. And Trudeau has probably one of the most abysmal approval ratings out of any world leader in the G7 or in the G20. But we see here, since 2023, Conservatives have really dominated the election, and right now they are really looking like they are going to win a large number of seats, 96% chance according to CBC that they do have a majority, and anything apart from a majority is very, very narrow, almost no chance of it happening to begin with. And now we can get to some of the different polling averages based on each province. Some provinces have a lot more seats than other provinces. But let's go through BC first. British Columbia Conservatives have a very, very strong performance of 48.6%. Liberals and NDP are much, much lower. So that means the Conservatives will probably win between 31 and 37 seats as of now. Same thing with Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Conservatives very strong at 54%, and that would also result in them winning a supermajority in terms of the seat projections. Quebec is probably going to be the only area in the country where Conservatives do not get the majority, but still a very strong performance at 26%, given that last election, Liberals were in second place, I do believe. Bloc Québécois, still very strong in the province of Quebec. This is the only province that Bloc Québécois can run their elections in and choose to run their elections in, and so they will be getting a 35% of the vote. Meanwhile, Conservatives and Liberals will be down in the 20s, and that does result in Liberals getting more seats than Conservatives on average. Still, the Bloc will probably get between 39 and 42 seats, so that is something very, very interesting. The strongest province for Conservatives will be Alberta, where they are sitting at a 62%, which is almost all the seats inside the province of Alberta. The province with the most seats, which is Ontario, coming at 122 seats. This is also going to be very good performance for the Conservatives since they are at 45%. Liberals are down at 26, and there's a little more uncertainty to what's going to happen in the Ontario because you see these lines are much more separated, meaning that there is a lot more uncertainty to who has the edge. And so right now, Conservatives are expected between 74 and 96. Liberals from 17 to 42, pretty big ranges, not much certainty going into this, but still I expect a lot of very competitive seats in the GTA area, so we're going to see what happens there. And then Atlantic Canada, which has the remaining 32 seats. This is usually a very liberal area. Last time around, in last election, the Liberals won pretty much most of the seats in Atlantic Canada. This is everything west and north of Quebec. But right now, the Conservatives do have a pretty significant 14-point lead, which also represents them flipping the delegation of Atlantic Canada and being able to win 23 to 24 seats. Very interesting numbers coming from CBC, and this does entail for us that right now Conservatives are expected to have a supermajority in the House of Commons. Let's also take a look at another website that does track polls. It is called 338 Canada. This is one that I've been looking at also for a while. They do update their polls pretty consistently, and they do show similar numbers as the CBC ones do show. So the CBC polls do have the Conservatives at 217 seats. Meanwhile, 338 Canada does have them at 220 seats. Very, very strong correlation between the two, which means that they are in agreement that Conservatives will fall between that 200 to 240 range, depending on what happens between now and October, the latest being October, when the election is supposed to happen. And we can really see on a map here how this is looking. And we could actually look at the map of the 2021 election to be able to compare how this is going to change. As we can see here, especially in provinces like Ontario, there is a lot of seats down here, a lot of ridings that are very liberal in the 2021 election that now will be flipping to Conservatives, and only 27 of them on average will be staying to the Liberals. So this is right here is a lot more than 27, and that'll be very bad news for the Liberals if this does continue. Same thing even in Montreal, where some of these seats are expected to flip to the Bloc Québécois. I don't expect too much changes for the Conservatives in Quebec, given that they are a minority in terms of these seats, given how it is proportioned and given how the people in Quebec usually vote. But the rest of the country, as we can see here, is pretty much a sea of blue. We have the prairies being always strong conservative areas, but even though the Liberals do have very small pockets of seats in the prairies, they actually expect it to go down even more to almost being extinct entirely. And probably the biggest surprise in this election so far is going to be BC, where usually Liberals perform really well. I mean, look at how many seats they do have in Vancouver and going all the way up in the BC West Coast. But right now, that'll be limited to 4 seats for the NDP and 2 seats for the LPC. That is crushing news, given that I can count at least 10 in the Vancouver area. That right there is going to be some really, really bad news if these do stay the same. And so we can actually take a look at some of these polls coming out and analyze that. Yes, we do see a little bit of a rise from the LPC, a little bit of a fall for the NDP, and a little bit of a fall for the CPC2. This is going to be normal. This is what I expected from Trudeau's resignation, especially given that there is going to be new leadership. Some people will be coming back to the Liberal Party, and that'll push them up a little bit. But we're going to see if this does end up flattening out or if this actually accelerates, because if it does continue to accelerate, then we're going to be having a completely different discussion. But as of now, with the Conservatives at 43%, they are still looking at a very, very strong win in the House of Commons. And we can take a look at some polls here. And a big reason why the Conservatives actually fell is because of this ECOS poll. And that's what I mean. Most polls are pretty consistent on the CPC, winning by a high double digits in the 18, 19, 20 range, sometimes above 20. But ECOS is the only one that actually has this race being a little bit closer, and that does affect the polling. So let's take that also into consideration when we're analyzing these poll numbers. And finally, the last thing that I want to talk about before I do close this video is the very detailed map of the prediction in the 338 Canada. I want to start west in Vancouver first. This is Vancouver. This is where usually Liberals and NDP do perform very well. We can see here Vancouver in the 2021 election, very Liberal. And look at it now. A lot of these seats are flipping to Conservatives, and a lot of other ones are going to be very, very close. Also something that Liberals and the NDP are going to be in trouble. Let's go to the biggest city in the country of Canada, and that will be the city of Toronto and the entire GTA area. But let's focus in mostly on these seats right here that are usually very Liberal. You can see them at the bottom of your screen right here. A lot of Liberal seats in Toronto. Now, half of them seem to be competitive or flipping to the Conservatives. And this is also very bad news, because this is where really Liberals rack up a lot of their seats. They rack up most of their seats in Toronto, Montreal, and a little bit scattered around Eastern Canada and in Vancouver, but mostly in Toronto, where they get a huge number of seats. But we can only count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that'll be extremely safe. We have another 5 that'll be a little bit closer, and then we have a lot of battleground seats that are originally supposed to be safe, even in the downtown areas of Toronto. So something else that the Liberals are very, very in trouble. Taking a look at Atlantic Canada, this area right here, very, very blue. Back in the 2021 election, a lot more red present on this map. And finally, if we look at Montreal down here at the bottom of your screen, we can see a lot of red surrounded by a lot of gray for the block. Now we can see still a lot of red, but it is going to be affected a little bit because some of that red will be changing to block, and the Conservatives will be eating into that margin so that the Liberals will have a much, much harder time at winning. And we do have some NDP seats in downtown Montreal as well. So that's going to be today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for taking a look at something new to my channel. Please subscribe, like this video, put all your comments in the section below, and I will check you guys out in the next one.